everybody. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I would like to give a small introduction about Noëlle. He is a strategy consultant at the Cybersecurity Institute, at Cyber Lead at the Security Institution for Governance and Leadership. Stellenbosch University is South Africa. Her work cuts across both the public and private sectors and has a strong focus on governance, risk, and compliance issues in information security. She has an extensive experience in cyber strategy and cyber warfare. She also has over 20 years of experience in higher education for the Faculty and Military Science of Stellenbosch University. She is a member of the review board of an international journal of cyber warfare and terrorism, as well as Australian Pacific Grey Zone Working Group. She is also a member of the group of global experts to the International Committee of the Red Cross in Geneva, with advices on the protection of civilians during cyber attacks. Noëlle is passionate about tech innovation in Africa and building cyber capacities on the continent. In 2020, she was voted one of the top 50 women in cyber in Africa. This is amazing introduction. It's an honor to introduce you, Ms. Noëlle. Now, would you connect, Ms. Noëlle, so that we can take her live?
Good morning. Okay, so can I go ahead and share? Are we ready to go?
Yes, you can go. Yes, you're ready to go.
Okay.
You can share your screen right now. All of us, bye.
Thank you.
I'll wait for you at the backstage.
Yes, and is that good? Good morning. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, and your screen is shared already. Yeah, you're good to go.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I apologize for that technical glitch. It's a great honor to be speaking to you this morning. They've been wonderful before me at this conference, and it's difficult to come after all of them, but I'm going to try and speak to everybody in the audience. It's difficult because one doesn't understand your audience always, and I hope there is something for everyone in this presentation. And I'd like to start by saying that I think countries have unique challenges and requirements when it comes to cybersecurity, and I hope that I can address in my talk today some of those which I feel may be pertinent to India specifically. A little bit about me. I've already had a very nice introduction, but yes, this is Stellenbosch University. It's close to Cape Town in South Africa, and I also lecture at the South African Military Academy to the military cadets, and I consult at the Cybersecurity Institute, and I'm passionate about cyber capacity building. I'm also actually quite passionate about India. It's the one place that I would really love to visit, and just never get to visiting, but I will one day. And also very much about India's cricket team, and I have to say it's my second team, and I'm always very happy when you beat England and Australia. So it's lovely to talk to you today. I think that from a cybersecurity point of view, what I'd like to do is I'd like to look at a top level down in terms of a nation state, and then down to the workplace, and specifically from the point of view of India, which is a massive technology power. It's a powerhouse globally. It's also a global power, and I think a state with a high level of cyber dependency because of its level of technology. So where do we find ourselves today in terms of the global strategic security ecosystem? And I think it's fair to say that we live in an era of hyper-technology change, and it's essential that countries and corporations learn to position themselves in order to proactively predict and embrace this change and be ready for it when it comes. But what we do see here is there's major shifts underway as we speak in terms of the global technology architecture. And it's not that easy to plan for these things and to be agile, but it's something that's demanded of us. And we know that within the next 5 years, things are going to change quite drastically. And the drivers of this change will be quantum computing, which will challenge all our current encryption capabilities and algorithms. Cloud computing is changing the way that we do things. I foresee that within 5 years, everything will be delivered by some type of cloud system. 5G, the speed, and especially from the point of view of a cyber defender, you're going to have billions of devices coming online with the Internet of Things, and then the speed with which these devices communicate and with which attacks arrive at your doorstep over 5G. Artificial intelligence is going to be a game changer both for cyber defenders as well as cyber attackers. And then we also have a global drive for improved data governance. And these things will all form a new framework which is going to change how we do things going forward. So how does cybersecurity interface with national security? So a quick word here, Harvard University has just released its latest study, what they call their International Cyber Power Index. And we're going to have a look here at how they rank India in terms of India's rank as a cyber power. You'll see they brought India in at 21, which I thought was quite a surprising statistic. And it does not really speak to, I would say, the capability that India actually has as a potential cyber power. I think India is sitting on an absolute treasure trove of manpower or people power, let me rather say, and that it's going to be probably in the future easier for India to articulate this through to rising up those ranks than for many other countries. But what they have said here is they point to some disjunctures in the current cyber structures within India, and they talk about the need to use the forthcoming national cyber strategy to fulfill both foreign and domestic policy objectives through cyber means and better articulate the roles and responsibilities of key bodies and organizations. And this is what I'd like to get to in my talk ultimately, is how do we align these things? And that India should seek to increase its pool of cybersecurity professionals, very relevant to our conference, and help its citizens to understand how to keep their devices safe and secure. So we talk about national cyber resilience and improve its ability to disrupt hostile actors and cyber criminals. And I think what's key here is understanding how the world's largest democracy, and certainly a sleeping tiger of a superpower, India, is going to embrace these challenges and move and power ahead. In fact, of when you look at countries here, I'm not trying to demean anybody, but the Netherlands, France, Germany, India should easily be able to leapfrog all of those powers. And simply why? Because of India's profile as being this very innovative, very tech-savvy population, should position India well to move up these ranks. India needs to address these issues simply because I think from a national security point of view, there are some formidable national security challenges at the moment, and going forward, I think there are some significant threats to Indian cyberspace. And there are then also the drive to bring increasingly Indian industries are becoming globalized. So this is where it all comes together. So how do you take your national cyber strategy and combine it with what the state needs to do, together with what the education system needs to do and corporations need to do, in order to prepare a cyber workforce and drive cyber capacity building? So we know that public-private partnerships are key in cyber capacity building. And one of the big things here is in the realignment of education. So education systems all over the world are changing, and they're changing very rapidly. And I think there's a key debate at the moment in terms of, especially at university level, are universities training the workforces required within the fourth industrial revolution? And there's a lot of people that say no. University education processes have become outdated. And sorry, I'm getting some feedback there. So that university processes have become very outdated, that the type of programs that universities offer are not speaking to the market. So we need to, especially within cybersecurity, get back to the drawing board on what are our educational and training outcomes and frameworks, and start examining issues such as what are the barriers to entry to cyber programs. And then lastly, I'd like to talk a little bit about the retention of human capital. So we know that cyber capacity building globally has become a major field for research and field work, and that all countries are actually battling with exactly the same issues. The first is, how do we build a quality cyber workforce in the shortest possible time? We need our cyber professionals in the marketplace as in yesterday. We can't wait 4 years for somebody to go through a university course and be working in the cyber workforce. How do nations, states play to whatever strengths it is that they do have? And this is a critical question for India, because I think the perception is out there that India has a fantastic coding and software engineering strength, a mathematical strength within its youthful population. And that youthful population on its own is a strength as well. And then how do we align what the private sector need and what the public sector needs together with our education system to produce this highly skilled cyber workforce, but also at the same time work together to create a robust national cyber posture. This is not something the government can do on its own, and it's certainly not something that the private sector can do on its own. And then produce a workable national cybersecurity strategy, which incorporates what we call this all-of-nation approach. So cybersecurity is necessitating, for the first time in a long while, that the government and its private sector need to work together with civil society to get on top of the cyber problem. And the cyber problem in all states is a big one. It's a big one from a criminal point of view, and it's a big problem from a national security point of view, and we need to solve both. And also there are societal challenges, whether it's cyberbullying or stalking, all that type of thing. We need to get on top of this. So the fundamental cornerstone that underlies all of these efforts lies in each country's human capital. This is where we have to figure out, how do we leverage what we have to build our cyber workforce and get on top of cyber issues. So we believe that within India there is fantastic diversity in the workforce and fantastic skills to do just this. India's biggest problem potentially is going to be retaining this workforce that it produces. I think we see a lot of skills immigration out of the global south. It's a problem that we sit with here in South Africa. I think it's a much bigger problem for India. We know that in Silicon Valley, so many of those tech titan companies are running on Indian software programmers. So that starts becoming the issue. Is once you put the building blocks in place to build this fantastic workforce, how do you retain that workforce? So looking at skills diversity, and this is, I think, quite important, is to understand who fits the profile of a person that would be working in cybersecurity. And I'd like to look here both at skills diversity as well as human diversity. So I think for many people who would perhaps like a career in cybersecurity, they're put off by the fact that they think of it as being highly, highly technical. And to be frank, there are areas of cybersecurity that are incredibly technical and demand a very high level of skill in that line. But then there are other areas of information security that increasingly are calling diverse experiences and diverse skills, and we're going to have a look at some of those. Then we've got the question of, right, what does the diversity of our cyber workforce look like? So we know that globally women make up somewhere between 10 and 20% of the global cyber workforce. Women make up something like 51% of the world's population. So while we know that we've got a tremendous shortage of cybersecurity workers internationally, almost half of the population is almost excluded from entering that workforce, and by so doing, bringing not only their thought diversity to it, but also alleviating that massive skills shortage issue that we deal with there. I'm going to put it out there and say age doesn't matter. Of course, age does have its drawbacks. However, it's not necessarily too late for a mid-career professional, probably isn't in fact, to transition their career over to something in the cybersecurity workforce. And we'll have a look at some areas that one can do that, possibly in the less technical domains, but certainly these workers are still in short supply. And then the ignored portion of the workforce, approximately 10% of the global population is what they would call neurodiverse, that is people who are somewhere on the autism spectrum or have dyslexia. And increasingly they're realizing that neurodiverse thinkers are an essential part of the cyber workforce, and that these are people that we're not necessarily seeing when we train for cybersecurity. So I think the question is, how does one get into cybersecurity? Especially as a woman, very often you would not necessarily be in the kinds of discussions where people start talking about getting into IT as a career or cyber as a career. Perhaps I think that's changing a little bit now, but certainly 10 years ago before it was the way things were. So there's many different opportunities and pathways for people with different kinds of talents to get into cyber. I think the biggest single thing here, though, that bears keeping in mind is that this is a field that continuously changes, and you will have to continuously upgrade your skills or your workforce's skills, ensure that they can master their tradecraft adequately. And the last tip is, I think everybody should bear in mind that take responsibility for shaping your own career as well as your aspirations, and constantly be building and be on the lookout for new learning opportunities. It's really essential. So in terms of planning a cybersecurity career, it's essential firstly to understand the different roles and career possibilities available, and I'll look at that now. But also in terms of that, you need to understand yourself. So it's no good if I say to myself, well, I would really like to be, I'd like to write codes, you know, and I can't code, or I'm really bad at maths. I'm probably not going to be a great coder. But I could be very good at other things. I might be very analytical in the way that I work, and therefore quite good in terms of cyber intelligence. So understand your strengths, your interests, as well as your aptitude. And I think this is something that I've spoken about with colleagues at length, is it would be great if we could develop a really good and intuitive cyber aptitude test to enable us to assist in planning these different paths. But then we also can ask ourselves, what are your current work experiences, especially if you're transitioning already after having worked for, say, 10 or 15 years? What do you already have that you can bring to the table and build on? And there are many things. And then your current qualifications. So, and that's not to say that none of them are applicable. In fact, almost any qualification you can build on now to build a career in cybersecurity. So I think the one thing I would say is, regardless of what line that you're going to go into, you do need to have a technical foundation. So we increasingly see, for example, a lot of lawyers going into cybersecurity, but it can't just be around the legal areas. If you don't understand how the technical possibilities play out, at least, it's not to say that you have to be able to do them, but you need to have an understanding. So there's got to be some fundamental technology layer behind you, and you can swap that up at almost any time. So I think back to that discussion on whether university portfolios now cater for the cybersecurity market, or whether the lead times are too long. We have a huge range of possibilities that students can choose upon now when they go into cybersecurity. And there are the university courses, undergraduate and postgraduate. Then there are certifications. I think certifications are in incredibly high demand from employers now. and one is able to actually plan and get a mix of certifications, which provides for good and wide foundation. I would always recommend internships. If you're battling to break into the job market, doing an internship is a great leg in. It's also often an international internship of 6 months or a year, also provides you with a fantastic foundation to come home. And then later on, even as a skilled cyber professional, a few courses at a university business school in executive leadership, project management, and risk management are great. Back to university, I think increasingly we still rely on really high-end computer science graduates to drive certain aspects of cybersecurity, but they would not make up the bulk of the technical workforce. The bulk of the technical workforces would probably use certifications to get into the marketplace and continue learning. The one thing, again, that I can say is that cyber requires lifelong learning. And if that's not your thing, I would probably not get into cybersecurity. So just in terms of a framework that works, especially within the whole view of national cyber capacity building, the National Institute of Standards in the United States has this nice career framework that they call it, the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Careers and Studies. And this provides a good ground map, if I can put it that way, for anybody who is looking to try and understand how to map out cyber roles and cybersecurity for a workforce. And we'll get to the diversity part a bit later. So, I mean, obviously there are different types of sectors as well, and you need to bear that in mind. So your workforce within a highly industrialized sector, your cyber workforce will need to have certain capabilities, for example, understanding the interface between operational technologies as well as ICT technologies that perhaps somebody in the government sector wouldn't. They would be more interested in something like cyber espionage and how that interfaces with cybersecurity. So again, even with frameworks like this, bear in mind that there are always nuances and that they can be quite sector specific. And the NICE framework is divided into 7 major high-level categories, which break down into speciality areas and work roles. What's quite important underneath here, we talk about capability indicators, and these learning attributes, these capability indicators are so important, because at the end of the day, you also need to ask yourself whether it's you that's taking the course or if you are managing a program of certifications, what are the graduate attributes that you're actually looking for when somebody graduates with a certification from university? What is it that you want them to be able to do? How do you want them to think? How do you want them to approach certain problems? So looking at the 7 high-level categories, you'll see here they break them down into analyze, collect and operate, investigate, operate and maintain, oversee and govern, protect and defend, and securely provision. And I'm going to just quickly break them down here for you and explain what those are. So analytics, for example, is an intelligence function. You'll see here this is not a primarily technical function. So people who are not that technical will do very well in this area. Whereas collect and operate evolves into cyber operations, and that is heavily technical. Here, investigation, and here you think a lot in terms of a criminal justice system. You're talking about digital forensics. They are both technical, but also forensic competencies. Again, cybersecurity demanding different strengths in different parts of the workforce. Operation and maintenance of systems, again, is technical, but then we get to oversee and govern, and here we're talking about governance, compliance, that type of thing, and these are not technical at all. We're in cyber risk management, cyber management, legal cyber law, education, and then governance and strategy. And there are many new certifications coming online for these areas, and people who previously have been in management functions or in risk management tend to gravitate towards these areas. Protect and defend, again, this is highly we're talking about vulnerability management, as well as underneath where we look at security provision. But here we have a plethora of different areas again, and this requires hybrid skills. So as you can see, there's really space for all different types of aptitudes and abilities within the cyber training area. Again, breaking down a speciality area like this one, we'd be looking at cybersecurity management. We're in that governance framework again, executive leadership, legal advice, program, project management. You can see, and then breaks it down in terms of attributes. So I find that is quite a useful way to start to understand different types of skills frameworks. But then we have increasingly this whole other area of cyber that people don't see. There's a whole other cyber workforce out there, and that is on the international stage. That is within governments, and it's within international organizations like the United Nations, and it's within think tanks and universities, and it's these cyber ambassadors, these technology ambassadors, and all these big cyber norm specialists, and even the big tech companies and states have created these big cyber policy departments. So you will see here, for example, new types of university courses springing up. For example, this one at the University of San Diego, cybersecurity operations and leadership. And there's a host of different things that you can do here. So these are really for the non-technical people. These are the people that negotiate and defend government's interests in cyberspace and also take this forward at universities. So these are your political scientists, your international relations specialists, etc. So again, something for everybody out there. But having said all of that, cybersecurity has something of an image problem. And that comes down to the fact, I think, that in the first place, people see it as quite a dark trade, in fact, which it's not. I think the right-hand side of cybersecurity is a very noble undertaking, in fact. But the other thing is this whole hoodie subculture, and part of this is what drives women to feel a little bit alienated from cybersecurity. And how do we redefine that paradigm and move it on? The first problem is that there does appear to be something of a gender bias within cybersecurity, and I'm probably not the first woman to say that I've sat in meetings where men will frequently, well, they're not going to get too technical here because, you know, so the women in the meeting can follow the discussion and things like that. And I think it's time to really throw those types of prejudices out of the window, because we know that women are just as technically savvy as men are, and encourage young women to consider cyber as a career and claim their space, so to speak. We know from the Britain's government communications headquarters, MI5 and MI6 are driving diversity and inclusion in their workforce really hard, because they will tell you that different people think differently and see different things. And that this type of, to counter the sophisticated threats, they've said, it takes people with a wide variety of skills and languages, etc., to be able to defend adequately, that this is something that we really need in our workforce. So it's not just about inclusivity, it's actually about better outcomes within cybersecurity. Again, the argument in favor of greater gender equality is really not one of right versus wrong or men versus women. Rather, it's having more women in the workspace is good for business. Diversity in perspectives, leadership, and experience is good for business. And I'm running short on time, so I'm going to just skip through this quite quickly. But women are also really good at soft skills. And in the workplace of the future, in the fourth industrial revolution, soft skills are really, really coming to the fore. A lot of how we work is about how we network, how we affirm people, how we build the people around us. Increasingly, we need to work in teams in order to get things done. And soft skills are an essential part of the workplace women are really, really good at that. Sorry, let's go forward there. So, as I've said, the biggest single thing in terms of outcomes is that we need people with disparate backgrounds, because the people we are pursuing, threat actors, hackers, bad guys, have a wide variety of backgrounds and experiences. And the wider the variety of your workforce that's defending, the better your chances of success. Different people see things differently. In closing, I think I'd like to quickly mention neurodiverse people as well. So, as I've already said, neurodiverse people include all people on the autistic spectrum, people with dyslexia. What do they bring that we can't with people who are not neurodiverse? Well, but the first problem is because sometimes they're different in the workplace, people tend to focus on the fact that they don't act in an everyday way, and they often don't get the job. They don't do well at job interviews. However, as the Australian Defence Department is finding, that the superior pattern detection abilities to tasks such as examining logs and sources of messy data for signs of intrusion or attack is off the charts, as they put it. So this is something one needs to consider and plan for. They're very logical and methodical, pattern recognition, attention to detail. I think the biggest single thing that we can ask ourselves is, what are our barriers to entry, and how do we close that gap? And that comes down to, with women, for example, knowing that at some point a woman is probably going to go on maternity leave, that she will always have those child caring responsibilities. Are there ways that you can create flexible working environments for women? We know now, for working from home, that this is indeed possible. We can start throwing out a lot of these things. COVID has given us that, at least, the ability to see the workplace differently, different working styles and processes. And this goes for neurodiverse people as well. I think Google have shown us the affordances of a quirky workplace where you focus on people's outcomes rather than their inputs. And I've run 3 minutes late, so I'm going to stop there. And thank you.
So it was a wonderful, wonderful session with Noëlle. There's a small question for you. So would cybersecurity capacity building be faster if governments have a compulsory annual fund allocation for cybersecurity strategies and innovation like they do for their defense capacity building?
Sorry, Sumi, I came in on the end of your question there. Could you just repeat it?
Yeah. So it goes like, would cybersecurity capacity building be faster if governments have a compulsory annual fund allocation for cybersecurity strategies and innovation like they do for their defense capacity building?
Yeah, definitely. This is where we talk about a whole of nation approach, and at the end of the day, so you would see that some states that have been particularly successful in building cyber capacity fast have appointed what they would call a cyber czar, somebody to head up that and bring the different government agencies and entities together to do what needs to be done. But if you don't resource cyber adequately, it will often be pushed to the background to make space for something that seems more pressing. Part of the problem with cyber threats is they're not visible. So obviously, if you've got some other national security threat that's visible and physical, you'll focus on that. So we do need to see compulsory government programs, I think, for developing the cyber workforce put into place. And these should start as early as at school, where you have cyber cadet type of programs, because you've got to catch them early, actually. The sooner the better.
And one of the students says that they like the word saying neurodiversity. So what is your take on this? What do you feel exactly what we have to learn from this? How we should look towards this?
Okay, I think my take is that there's quite a stigma around having a condition such as dyslexia or autism. People tend to think of it as that you are less mentally capacitated than other people, whereas in fact you just think differently, and very often you see different things. So there's the saying, it's easier to think outside the box when you are already outside the box. And this is what neurodiverse people, and they're 10% of the workforce, they see things differently. And especially when it comes to, for example, intelligence analysis in cyber, it's about joining the dots and it's about recognizing patterns, and they bring such an invaluable service here. So Albert Einstein was dyslexic. Alan Turing, who broke the Germans' Enigma code during World War II, was neurodiverse. These people are, in fact, brilliant, but we will tend to focus on, when they come in for an interview, the fact that he's fussing over his shoelaces or he's fiddling with his watch the whole time, instead of thinking, I've actually got a different person here, but I can see he's brilliant. And I think we too often want to put people in boxes, that this is how you must dress, this is how you must behave. And when it comes to cyber, we actually need to start thinking a little bit wider than that.
Exactly. Okay, the next question is organizations' ability to identify relevant talent and provide adequate support hindering the professional development of the security workforce?
Sorry, if I just understand the question, is it necessary for organizations to have that, or do I think it's adequate? I would say that if I understand the question, that any company or training organization needs to have a program in place to understand what talent they have and how to harness that talent, and who could potentially be beneficial in their cyber workforce, but where their aptitudes lie. And because there's so many different types of certifications, so would this person be great at governance? Would they be great at data management? Would they be great at penetration testing? Would they be good at forensics? And there's all these different lines that people can go into, but that comes with what that person's actually good at. The fact of the matter is there's something for almost everybody in cybersecurity. And I think very often we don't look at our workforce and realize that we're now going outside, when we could say, well, who have I got here that I could actually start upskilling in my organization, and adding to the skills they already have, and upskilling them to become part of my cybersecurity workforce. Thank you, everybody.